Hello, SheLovelies. My name is Shaley, and I don't know if you've tuned in, but we've been doing a series called Sisters in Mental Illness, where we're talking to different people that struggle with different things, and we just want to smash the stigma wide open and keep talking about it. And today I have one of my dear friends, Meslisa Kullman. We met last year at our Rise Up Sister conference, and it just went from there. And I adore Melissa, and I'm so excited that you get to know her today and hear her story. Melissa, I would love you to tell me a little bit about your story and introduce yourself.
Yeah, so currently living in British Columbia, and I'm a mother to 3 boys. Tomorrow my son turns 7, and then I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. And my husband Jeff and I have been married for about 8 years. I grew up in Ontario and came to BC for university, and I am a teacher by trade. And so, yeah, I love kids, and I get 3 of them all the time.
Yay!
Yay!
It's summer, right?
It's summer break.
Well, I would love to hear, I'm actually excited because I don't know all of your story, and I just love to hear it.
Yeah. So I grew up just north of Toronto in a small town. My mom and dad, an older brother and younger sister. And weight was something that our family talked a lot about. And from an early age, I began having some unhealthy patterns with eating. And that grew to the point that when I was in university, I did have an eating disorder, just quite strong disordered eating. So for me, unlike a lot of the girls in dorms that would talk about their eating disorders, I never labeled myself as that because I binged and I did not purge. So my cycle was an overeater. When I was in university, by the end of my 4 years, I had gained about 60 pounds. It happened when I was younger. Like, I was always like the chunkier kid with all my friend groups. But in university, just with identity issues, with going through some family issues, with some depression, I just started relying more on that cycle of binge and then shame and then binge and then shame to kind of comfort me and get me through, and then the shame would bring me back down. So a year and a half after university, that's when I started to kind of identify that I did have disordered eating, and it became more talked about. But when I was younger, I was just the fat girl. I was the funny fat girl growing up. And then when I then was like in university and it started to get worse, it was out of control. Skip ahead, I will talk about some recovery that I was in, but I am still dealing with this break of a relationship with food and this shame cycle. It's such a tough one, and it can pop up in different areas, but for me, food is just so strongly attached to how I cope, and that message, just that narrative of like, okay, if I don't feel worthy, well, I can eat this, and then I think that I'm okay, but then I'm actually worse off. Yeah.
You mentioned, I found it really interesting, you mentioned that your family talked a lot about food. What did you mean by that? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, so my dad, so we're short. We're a short family. Actually, when I met my husband, because my parents live in Ontario, I didn't have a reference to how short my dad was. And so when my dad first met my husband, I was like, oh yeah, my dad's about your height. My husband's like 5'9", 5'10",
Yeah.
My dad's like 5'4". And that's when I realized, oh, we're really short. So I'm 5'1", and it just, when you are shorter, for some people that, you know, struggle with weight, it really shows when you do gain weight. My dad and my mom were both serial dieters, like, Nutrisystem, Slim Fast. When I was like 14 or 15, my mom really wanted to help me, and so she took me to a dietitian. And that was kind of my starting of this like serial dieting. And so we always talked about food. I remember my dad lost tons of weight on Nutrisystem and then ended up in the hospital with gallstones. Yeah. And it was really painful for him. And so I have memories of like talking about food, obsessing over food. When I was in like late elementary, that's when I started like taking food, and then my parents would talk about, we don't have a lot of money, and someone's always taking the food, and like there was just a lot of like talk about it. It wasn't just like, eat when you're hungry. It was like, when we're gonna get our next snack. And a lot of families are like that. We weren't abnormal, but for me that was like the beginning foundation of how I saw food. Was you talk negatively about it, you obsess about it, or you go on a diet and you deprive yourself of it.
Right. So that happened very young. Wow. Yeah, I did in high school. It cracks me up now because people say things like, like thin like you, or things like that. And that was not always the case. I, as well, in high school, I was always friends with like the pretty skinny girl. And then I was like the funny chubby sidekick. That was like my job. And the guy would come through me to her.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, and I remember I did Weight Watchers in grade 10, and it did teach me a lot, and there were good things about it. But even then, I still used that in a way where when it was the weigh-in day. So you had all these plans, like weigh in, like, okay, you barely wear anything.
Yes. The manipulation.
Yes. And then immediately afterward, I figured out I could still lose weight if I ate like all afterward that day, like pigged out that day, but they got right back on it. So it actually, I turned it into something that didn't work. And I didn't realize. I got diagnosed with, at some point when they were misdiagnosing me with the eating disorder, but I would only have, it was really confusing to me because I only had it or struggle 6 months out of the year, because being bipolar, when I get depressed, is the only thing I can control.
Right.
So it's what I do. So then they thought it was that, but it's actually depression was the underlying thing.
Yeah.
Because I could tell you like every morsel and every minute of exercise that I did between January and May. Yeah. May, I didn't even remember if I ate. Like,
like, did I do that?
I know. It was really, really bizarre. So I hear you with the different weight loss things, and it was really
and they, like, when you said about Weight Watchers and teenagers, like, they actually advertise to teenagers, like the business of these, and so kids are starting to diet, and that's the foundation that they're being handed, that you have to measure up in this way, or you have to do this, or it scares me. Yeah. It scares me.
And it was hard. My family was the opposite of your family in that they were all naturally fit. Like, even my mom, it didn't matter. And we were, they could eat as much as they wanted, right? So, and then there was habits. We ate regular meals, but sometimes we would go a long time and then have like the hugest dinner or whatever. I think because it didn't affect them, that there wasn't, do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't have regular eat every couple hours kind of thing. It kind of, feast or famine for me.
Yes.
And, I remember sneaking muffins, like, I don't know why, but I remember like taking them into the bathroom, and
Mm-hmm.
just reminded me of that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I used to sneak things from the kitchen, and then I would take the wrappers and I'd put them in my sister's room in her garbage so that she would get blamed and I wouldn't. And oh, I think that my parents did, but I don't remember them ever saying anything. But like when I was in recovery, a lot of those things I had to admit, and I was like, oh my goodness, like, oh, I did that. But that was part of the disorder. Like I wasn't coping well. And I knew that there was a negative consequence to people finding out that I was eating all of this. So then I was like, okay, I need to hide. I need to deflect. I need to, yeah.
And I don't know about you, but it's like those tapes.
Oh
What
my
would
God.
happen with me is that I would be so anxious or so
Yeah.
it's like this tape would tell me, you know what, if you stuff your face, if you get a chocolate bar, if
Mm-hmm.
you do all this, you're going to be better. And I remember times it was literally vibrating, like, and then it was like, I felt like if I don't go to the store, like if I don't
Yes.
do something like something bad's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then the
Yeah.
moment, you get
Oh yeah.
after, and then it's like,
It was,
I'm going to eat only a carrot tomorrow. And then
yes. Yes.
for you?
Oh, and I remember in high school doing things like, friends would say, oh, let's walk home. And I'd be like, yeah, let's walk home. Let's just like walk this way. And it would be past a certain store that had a certain treat that I liked. And I'd just be like, oh, hey, why don't we go on in? And I had a friend who I was really close with in high school. She was actually anorexic. And so when she was in her anorexia, I found it like really hard to be with her. And then there'd be times where she would try to eat, and then that obsessive about food I would latch onto, and maybe she wouldn't eat as much, but she would talk all the time about food. And so like she was my food talking partner. And so we'd always like talk about it in a way that it wasn't healthy at all.
Yeah.
And so like doing things like that, and I didn't see that for a long time. I just thought, oh yeah, I like that place, or I did that, no big deal. And then later when I was in recovery, then I was like, oh my goodness, like I was manipulating a lot of situations so that I could get more food.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I remember thinking, I too knew a couple of friends that were, and I remember thinking, I just hate that I even thought it, but I remember feeling jealous because I was like, they're going through the same thing, but at least it's working for them. And
Yes.
skinny, I'm going through it and I'm still,
Yes.
or we're binging together.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yes.
But then they go
Yeah.
through it all up and I just got chubbier.
Yeah. Well, so at one point I did try to purge,
Yeah.
and I couldn't do it. Like I had a friend that I had asked how she does it, because she said like, oh yeah, I did this, and I was like, oh, how did you do that? And I tried, and like I just could not do it.
Yeah.
And then oh, Melissa, I can't believe you, like you need to learn to get rid of some of the, like the tape that was playing was like so negative. And I didn't tell a lot of people. I just said things like, oh, well, I come from a bigger family. I'm big boned. I had a lot of like things to throw out, like cliche lines that like deflected from the fact that I was always gaining weight. And I played soccer in high school, and I loved soccer. Like I played in grade 9 and grade 10, but by like the summer between 10 and 11, I gained so much weight that I couldn't play in grade 11 and 12. I couldn't run the laps anymore. I physically I couldn't do it. And there was a part of me that didn't want to do it. I just was like, I'd given up kind of, to like, oh yeah, I like it, but whatever, I'm into some other things. And looking back, I'm like, oh man, looking at my younger self, I'm like, oh, I wish someone had like kind of encouraged me to go forward and break through that. But yeah, I had been quite active up to middle of high school, and then I backed off, and and just felt so much shame over my body. And I had been through some bullying. Not every girl goes through bullying, but there was a group in my elementary school that liked to pick on girls, and there was a few of us that felt kind of bullied and put down in different ways. And some of that some of those words kind of stuck with me, and they were part of the tape that I would play myself in my head when I was post binge. It all adds in, right?
Yeah, I remember when I was going through a bit of it too. This is going to age myself because it is back in, but I remember I was so desperate to wear a crop top, and there was no way I could wear a crop top. Like it was just a bad scene. And I remember, like you said about soccer, I'm so sad now that it inhibited me from doing things. Like I remember completely avoiding the beach. I was watching my daughter just, I want to go up to Robert Hope Pool here, and I want to do this and I want to do that. And I thought, why didn't I ever go? I went with my family when they went with families, but I was thinking about high school and thinking about, like, how come we never took beach trips or whatever? And thinking about it now, it's because I said no, because I didn't want to be seen in a bathing suit. And I just breaks my heart for my little Shaley self. But
I know.
Yeah. Wow. Well, we're going to be talking a little bit more in our next video. We're going to talk about, when Melissa knew that it was time to get help. So I hope you'll click through to the next video.